Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here. It's an honor to speak at the Compassion Fatigue Conference. I was here last year, and I did talk a lot about burnout and mental health. I talked about the myth of the gladiator. Justice Strathy wrote a phenomenal memo and on burnout and mental health, and the myth of the gladiator, which really resonated with me as a young lawyer. When I thought about a litigator, I thought about the age-old shooting from the hip, not preparing, going to court and being able to rebut every argument that comes at you in a really aggressive type of manner. And then throughout my practice, I realized that that really is just a myth. And what it did was create this horrible sense of impending doom, this horrible sense of imposter syndrome. Wait a minute, I'm not that. I'm not a man. I'm just me. And over the years, I realized that it is just a myth. And the best way to practice law and advocate for your clients is by being and understanding who you are as a person. It's not shooting from the hip, but it's considering your argument. It's developing your argument. It's preparing, and that the devil is in the details. And when you come to court prepared and calm and neutral, you're much more able to rebut an argument because you've already anticipated what that is. It's much less about shooting from the hip. My presentation last year was very much about that myth of the gladiator and avoiding burnout. And today I wanted to focus on the mental health challenges from a bit of a different perspective. I wanted to talk about a related concept of trauma-informed lawyering. I did receive a certificate in trauma-informed lawyering, although I'm certainly no expert, but a lot of these concepts relate, and I wanted to talk about them today. For those of you who were not here last year, we talked about mental health, the mental health continuum. And we talked about many of these, we talked about the fact that it's a spectrum. And so people can go back and forth on the spectrum depending what circumstances and situations they're facing. We all strive to stay in the healthy, normal functioning range. And that doesn't mean you don't have any stress. It doesn't mean you're happy all the time, but it does mean that you're able to respond to stressful situations in a healthy, functioning manner. So you're able to sleep, continue your social relationships, and you're not showing any symptoms of anxiety or depression. You're able to manage your stress in a healthy manner. And then you can move toward reacting, which is something that is quite common and expected as well, particularly when there's more stress. And it increases, and we notice some changes, and maybe you're feeling more worried or more fatigued, your sleep is more affected. There's some early signs, and that's when you notice those early signs, that's when we really have to look at what our resilience tools are and implement those more. And as you move along the continuum, you move to injured, where there's more of a functional impairment, and you can see that your mood may be lowered, you may be having more anxiety, bad sleep, your appetite's affected, and you're not as well able to deal with the stressor. And then at the end of the continuum is illness, where you should seek some type of professional support, counseling or a physician, given you may have a diagnosable clinical disorder. Last year I talked about these statistics. They're terrifying. 96% of law students experience significant stress. 62% of lawyers experience burnout due to work, and 25% of lawyers experience stress on a daily basis. These stats are from 2023, and I only expect them to be higher in 2024, consistent with interest rates. Oh. Better? Short. Okay. Please let me know if this is better. Okay. Well, some stress can motivate. Now, Mr. Gluckstein talked about the best amount of stress, and he was so true. There is an optimal level of stress that drives us. I know if I have a discovery, a mediation, or a trial coming up, then I need to prepare. But the problem is when there's too much stress. And things like trauma put your stress into overdrive and activates a fight or flight response where people start to suffer significantly, experiencing physical, psychological, and social breakdown. And this chart is demonstrative of what can happen when the stress levels are out of whack. Knowing the consequences of experiencing trauma, how can we best help our clients who have gone through these experiences? By using trauma-informed lawyering. Being able to recognize the first point is understanding and addressing the impact of trauma on clients is crucial for compassionate and effective representation. You don't have to say, I understand how this experience feels because you didn't experience it. But what you do have to acknowledge is empathize that they've gone through a traumatic event and help support the client in a safe way. And you're doing that to empower them to be able to make decisions. Clients are also navigating very, very stressful situations, and they're recounting traumatic events that can produce their own stress hormones, and that can send clients into a fight or flight response. We've all been stressed by clients who are also stressed, and the combination of that cumulative impact can certainly be overwhelming to our own mental health. So we need to build trauma-informed systems. And how does that start? It starts at the very beginning of a lawyer-client relationship, from the intake. The first time we speak to a client, we have to do something that's not intuitive to everybody. It's called deep listening. People just want to be heard. They want to share their story, and they want to know that whoever's on the other side is hearing them. Despite the time pressures of practice and the temptation to get straight down to business, investing time to build a connection with your client can demonstrate that you are safe and trustworthy and can make a major impact on your ability to form a collaborative relationship. Sometimes it's easy, and my client is a mom who has 3 kids just like me, and I can tell my client about the toddler tantrum that I really didn't manage very well, and we have this instant connection. And sometimes it's more challenging. I had a client who liked to build machines. I've never built a machine before. I have no idea what's involved in building a machine. But I asked the questions, the specific questions. How long does it take? What materials did you use? How do you feel about it? How do you even come up with these machines? And my very interest in his hobby established that connection. Being an effective advocate is not just advancing your case against opposing counsel, but it is being about guiding your client appropriately throughout this litigation process. And don't forget that the litigation process is scary and unknown, and it often involves asking somebody who's experienced trauma to relive their traumatic experience over and over and over again to a bunch of strangers. And that reliving of trauma can certainly add stressful hormones and create more significant mental health. So it's so important that that we create a safe space and we manage our clients' expectations to make sure they're comfortable through the process and so that they are not re-traumatized. I'm going to use this example from my parenting journeys, but it's the example of being a stable pilot. So I have to credit Dr. Becky, if any of you are familiar with her. So she talks about this stable pilot example. And so you're on a plane and you've never been on a plane before. And suddenly the plane has some turbulence and the pilot comes on and the pilot says, I don't know what's going on. And you're sitting there thinking, oh God, this is not good. There's no control. This pilot does not have control of the plane. You're going to start freaking out more. In the example 2, you're on the plane for the first time, turbulence happens, and the pilot gets on and says, stop freaking out. Why are you freaking out? Stop this. And you're thinking, I'm freaking out because I have a reason to freak out because there's turbulence. This pilot is not in control. This pilot doesn't understand me. And then there's the third example. You're on the plane and there's turbulence. And the pilot comes on and says, this is normal. You're supposed to feel this way. This turbulence is going to happen for another 3 minutes, and then we're going to be in the clear. And you're thinking, I've got this calm pilot, and she knows what she's doing. Or he, or them, or they. Our jobs as lawyers are to be that objective, calm, stable pilot so that we can navigate our clients through another traumatic experience of litigation and help them seek justice and help them get compensation. And if you are so stressed, how are you supposed to guide your client? And this is why it's so important. Sorry, I'm gonna go back. Oh, sorry, just to go back for 1 second. When you build this connection, an important point of building this connection is that if you build a relationship of trust with your client, that extends throughout the lifespan of litigation. Why would your client respect your opinion of what the risks are of litigation, of whether you should take this offer, of whether the offer is reasonable or not? Why would they listen to you if they don't feel safe and trusted, and if you don't have that established relationship of trust? It's so important. I just wanted to emphasize that. But there is a balance and there is a spectrum. While you have to be attentive to your client's needs and you have to consider what do they need every time you speak to your client, and sometimes you know from the day one, and then sometimes it takes a couple months, but you know what your client needs. Does your client need to be involved in every procedural motion throughout the file? Or does your client trust you? Hey, Michelle, I don't want to read the defendant's mediation brief. You handle this. You need to understand what your client's needs are in order to effectively guide them. But it is a fine balance. Because what can happen when you're empathizing so deeply with your client is you can experience compassion fatigue. What is compassion fatigue? It's the cost of caring for others for their emotional pain. I didn't really understand that. I thought, if my client has PTSD, am I taking on their PTSD? It's not really that, or at least in my experience, it wasn't. I did a 3-month medical malpractice trial, and my client was so injured, and it was devastating. And the stakes were high. For sure, the stakes were high. But from my perspective, the stakes were higher because I cared so much about this family, and I wanted them to succeed. So I wasn't taking on their pain, but I felt like there was a tremendous amount of pressure on me to succeed for them, and also for my firm and for my reputation. And I put so much pressure on myself that I was debilitated for a while. And all these signs of compassion fatigue, yep, I had them. Ask my husband. Stayed up for hours crying and crying and crying. It was not productive. And I was stressed. I was very stressed. I had negative thoughts, doubting myself, feeling inadequate. I was struggling, ruminating over my mistakes, and it was a distraction. It wasn't productive. So what are the tools and how do we get through compassion fatigue? By resilience, by practicing our resilience toolbox, building our resilience toolbox. In our toolbox, we have self-awareness, relationships, self-care, and purpose. My personal mantra since law school has been, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. I've said this phrase in my head and out loud whenever I feel overwhelmed with volume. For me, I make a list of what to do. I start and I work on that until I complete it, and then I get a sense of accomplishment. These are just little small things. But resilience is the ability to bounce back. And the first thing is self-awareness. Recognize your physical and emotional state. Where are you on that mental health continuum? And when you understand yourself and your fears and your weaknesses, and you actively identify when you need help and support, that's the first step. It's important. Self-care. We all need to make it our business to practice self-care. We cannot guide our clients. We cannot be effective advocates. We cannot deal with the 4 a.m. stressful emails from opposing counsel if we are not practicing self-care. I'm going to use this water bottle example that really resonated with me. But you can take an empty water bottle. You can even fill it a little bit with water. And if you hold it up, you can hold it up for a minute and that's okay. If you hold it up for 4 hours, your arm is going to hurt, even if the water bottle is empty. And if you keep your arm up there for 24 hours, you're not going to be able to hold that water bottle. You need to put down the water bottle. The water bottle is stress. You put the water bottle down, you can pick it up, and it's light, and it's easy. It's easy to hold. You can hold it longer. You can hold it better. Maybe you hold it in a different way, and you're like, oh, that works. It's so important to step away. John Burton, one of my huge mentors, and I'm so privileged to call him a friend, but he talked about being the PIG, which I love, and I can't wait to tell my kids that. But I would refer to it as being trigger happy. How many times have I gotten an email from defense counsel that made my blood pressure skyrocket, and all I wanted to do was draft an email immediately? The practice of stepping away is so important. Put down the water bottle, come back to it when you've considered your position, when you've thought about what the rebuttals may be, when you're better prepared, when you're calmer, because cooler heads always prevail. In terms of self-care, I religiously go to my hot yoga class, and I've joined a hip hop class. I was a big dancer as a kid, and it's been so nice. Find the things that make you happy. Step away from your regular day-to-day. Do something different. Step out of your comfort zone. It really helps. Try it. The most important tool in my resilience antidote, in my resilience toolbox, is relationships. Having a mentor, whether it's a formal or informal mentor, is the support system that I truly lean on when I'm in a state of stress. This talk is particularly timely because, sadly, we've lost a very close colleague and mentor. Harv Lewin passed. I'm not sure if any of you knew him, but he was a very close friend of mine that I worked with for over 10 years. This week has been difficult. And what my firm did is we all shared emails and stories of Harv together, and we all leaned on each other for that support. And it really, really helped. And it helped me process the grief, and it helped me, or it's helping me, find my way through it. And sharing our stories. And I have to share just one story that my colleague Sonia shared with me about Harv. And it's just something so simple. He just emailed her, "Great job. You're really good at your job. Great job on this file. You're really good at your job." And it made me think. All these emails were flying back and forth with my colleagues about stories about Harv and how much we all loved him. And I thought, it's really sad that he's not reading this. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to tell your support network now that you care about them, that they did a good job. It matters. It really matters. And tell them when they can hear it. Finding your purpose is another part of resilience, and just making sure that you find meaning and purpose in your life. And I'm not talking about existential stuff, but identifying values of what's important to you about the work that you're doing. Remind yourself why you do the work that you do, and making sure that you identify with those purposes is part of your resilience toolbox. Here are my slides on self-awareness, mindfulness. Really appreciate John doing this before the start of this speech, because I was certainly nervous, and breathing through it really does help. So self-awareness, mindful, self-care, what brings you joy, biking, and these are some of the core values that you can look through and connect and think about in your own life. These are the 6 core components of relationships that it's important to think about, and be self-aware of the relationships in your own life. Make sure you're respecting your colleagues, communicating appropriately, building that relationship of trust, acceptance, and inclusion for people who are different than ourselves. This is my presentation today. I'm so honored and thrilled to be here, and it's so wonderful sharing with you all and hearing the stories. What Adrian spoke about really resonated with me. Litigation is very, very scary and unknown to many of our clients. It sounded like her experience was very traumatic. There were a lot of systematic aspects that were re-traumatizing her. And I feel so privileged to be in a role where I can help people navigate that system. And it's so wonderful working with colleagues like Gluckstein and partners in compassion and mental health. So please reach out if you need any support. I'm happy to have any chats with any of you, and thank you so much for having me.